I spent my entire life believing that the people you raise will one day protect you. But I was wrong. The night I discovered the truth, I stood in my silent doorway holding the empty car keys of my late husband, the only thing I had left of him, while the man my daughter married smiled boldly and said, "It's gone. I sold it." They expected me to break. They expected me to be helpless, confused, grateful even. But what they didn't know was that my husband left me one final secret. A hidden truth buried deep inside the car Brandon had stolen. A truth so powerful it would expose every lie, every mask, and every crime he had ever committed. And soon, everything he thought he owned, my daughter, my house, my future, would collapse right beneath him. My name is Evelyn Harper, and I'm 68 years old. It has been 2 long years since my husband Martin passed away. Some days, the grief sits quietly in the corners of my house like dust you keep meaning to wipe away. Other days, it rises with a force that feels almost physical, like someone pressing a hand against my chest. Still, I keep myself moving. I start every morning the same way, brewing a cup of strong black coffee, the way Martin always drank it, and opening the curtains so the sunlight can fall across the picture of us that sits on the living room shelf. Then I usually glance toward the garage, where the last big piece of him still lived. Our 1959 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz convertible. Martin spent 30 years restoring that car, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. It wasn't just a vehicle to him. It was his memory, his pride, his joy, his peace. Sometimes, when the nights got too quiet, I would sit inside that car just to feel close to him again. The leather still held his scent, clean, warm, familiar. But that morning was different. As I stood in the kitchen sipping my coffee, something caught my eye through the window above the sink. The garage door, wide open. Not halfway, not an inch, fully open. My breath stalled. Martin never left that door open. Not once in 40 years. Even after he passed, I always made sure it was closed at night. Always. A heaviness settled in my stomach. I grabbed my robe tighter and stepped outside, the cold concrete under my slippers making the moment feel sharper, more real. The air was crisp, but I barely felt it. All I could see was the open garage, a dark wide mouth staring back at me. I stepped inside. The familiar smell of motor oil, leather, and old wood should have comforted me the way it always did. But instead it made my throat close up. Because the space in the center, the exact place where the Cadillac had rested for years, was empty. Completely empty. I stood frozen, staring at that bare concrete and the dark stain where the car used to sit. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I blinked, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. But the truth didn't change. The car was gone. The one thing Martin left for me, stolen from right under my nose. My coffee cup slipped slightly in my hand as a wave of panic pushed through me. I whispered his name, almost hoping he might answer, "Martin?" But only silence came back. And that was the moment. The moment everything in my life began to unravel. I stood there for a long time, staring at the hollow space where Martin's Cadillac had once lived. It felt like my chest had caved in, leaving nothing but air and disbelief inside me. That car wasn't just metal and paint. It was 30 years of my husband's love, patience, dedication. 30 years of him pouring himself into something he wanted to leave behind for me. And now it was gone. My hands were trembling when I heard a car engine outside. Tires rolled into the driveway. When I stepped out of the garage, I saw a sleek dark SUV pulling in. My daughter Jasmine's. I recognized the sound before I even saw it, because she visited often enough for me to know the rhythm of her arrival. But something felt different today. The moment the engine turned off, a knot formed in my stomach. The passenger door opened first. Brandon Hale stepped out, my son-in-law. Designer clothes, expensive watch, that same polished confidence he always carried like a second skin. Yet today, he couldn't look me in the eyes. He shoved his hands deep into his pockets and stared at the ground like a child caught doing something he knew would destroy everything. Jasmine got out next. My daughter looked tired, eyes puffy, lips pressed together, shoulders small, like she was shrinking into herself. She walked slower than usual, and my heart squeezed. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. They stopped a few feet away from me. Brandon cleared his throat first. Evelyn, we need to talk. I didn't blink. Where is the car? He swallowed hard. His gaze flicked to the empty garage behind me and then back to the ground. I sold it. The words echoed like a slap. For a moment, I felt the world tilt sideways. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. You what? My voice cracked. Brandon, what did you just say? He finally looked up, only for a second. His eyes were glassy, but his tone was defensive. It was just sitting there. Unused. Collecting dust. We thought. We. My voice sharpened. Jasmine, is this true? My daughter flinched, tears pooling behind her lashes. She looked at me for a moment, just long enough for me to see her shame, but then her eyes dropped to her hands. Brandon stepped forward, cutting her off. We needed the money, Evelyn. We're going to Brazil next month for a business trip. It's important for Jasmine's career and my new partnerships. And, well, we didn't want to bother you. So I used my key. My heart twisted. Your key? Brandon, that key was for emergencies. Not for. He raised his hands like he was the victim. Look, it wasn't a big deal. The car's old. And honestly, $8,000 is a generous price for something that ancient. $8,000. For a car people spent their whole lives searching for. For something Martin restored bolt by bolt, year by year, with the kind of love you can't put a price tag on. $8,000 for the last piece of my husband. I felt myself step back. Jasmine reached out as if she wanted to hold my arm, but then she hesitated, like she wasn't allowed to touch me unless Brandon approved. My voice came out barely above a whisper. You sold your father's legacy for plane tickets? Brandon exhaled sharply. Evelyn, please. Don't be dramatic. The car was outdated. You can't even drive it. We're moving forward with life, and you should too. Then he placed a hand on Jasmine's back in a way that didn't look comforting. It looked controlling. We did what made sense. The casual cruelty of his tone hit me harder than anything else. Jasmine stood silent beside him, her shoulders shaking. I wasn't sure if she was afraid, ashamed, or both. I felt something inside me fracture. You should have asked me, I said quietly. Brandon smirked, not an open smirk, but the kind that flickers at the corner of someone's mouth when they believe they've won. Would you have said yes? No, I answered. Exactly, he replied, as if that settled everything. Jasmine's eyes met mine again. There was a plea in them, a plea I didn't yet understand. Brandon tugged her arm gently. We should go. We have packing to finish. He turned around. Jasmine hesitated, as if she wanted to say something more. But then Brandon's voice drifted back. Jazz. Let's go. She swallowed, whispered, I'm sorry, Mom, and followed him. I stood there long after their SUV disappeared down the street, long after the hum of the engine faded. The wind began to move through the empty garage, brushing against the concrete where Martin's car once stood. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying not to break right there on the driveway. I whispered into the silence, Martin, what do I do now? The air didn't answer. But the next morning, something else did. A phone call. A stranger. And the first thread of a truth I never expected to uncover. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Martin's empty parking spot inside the garage, like a wound carved into the concrete. Brandon's words kept replaying in my head, sharp and cold, slicing into me all over again. Just sitting there. Not a big deal. $8,000, outdated. By sunrise, my heart felt bruised. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Martin and I shared breakfast for decades, and stared at my cold, untouched coffee. His journal lay open beside me, the one he used to record every detail of the Cadillac's restoration. 30 years of his neat handwriting. 30 years of numbers, notes, sketches, ideas, jokes, memories. The kind of memories people take a lifetime to build. But now they felt like they had been ripped away. At 7:08 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. My mind was too tired, too hollow. But something nudged me, a tiny instinct I couldn't explain, and I answered. Hello. A man's voice came through the line, deep and hesitant, as if he had rehearsed his words many times but still wasn't sure he had the right to say them. Mrs. Harper? This is. My name is Marcus Hale. I sat straighter. I'm sorry, I don't think I know you. No, ma'am, he said softly. We haven't met. But I have your husband's car. The air left my lungs. For a moment, the kitchen blurred around me. My husband's. What? The Cadillac. Yes, ma'am. The 1959 Eldorado Biarritz. Your son-in-law brought it to my workshop 2 days ago. Brandon sold it, I whispered. There was a long pause on his end. Yes, Marcus finally said. He did. For $8,000. Mrs. Harper, I need you to come here. Today. As soon as you can. Something about the way he spoke, low, careful, almost grieving, made a cold shiver move down my arms. Why? I asked. Another pause. Then, quietly, because your husband trusted me. And because he left something for you. Something I think you need to see. I clutched the edge of the table. Left something? Martin? But, he passed away 2 years ago. I know, he said gently. He came to me before that. More than once. He asked me to keep something safe for you. To wait until the right moment. And when Brandon walked into my shop with that car, I knew the moment had come. My pulse quickened. What did he leave? I can't explain it over the phone, Marcus said. I need you to see it yourself. Please. Mrs. Harper, I'm not trying to scare you, but I think your husband was worried about something. Or someone. The implication hit me like a gust of cold air. About Brandon? I whispered. Marcus didn't answer immediately, which told me more than words ever could. Finally, he said, I'll text you the address. My workshop is on the east side of town. I'll be waiting for you. And Mrs. Harper? Yes. Come alone. A chill ran down my spine. Not fear exactly, but a sharp awareness that something big, something dangerous, something hidden had begun to surface. Okay, I said. I'll come. When the call ended, I looked down at Martin's journal again, his last entry still open. Almost done. 30 years on this beauty. Can't wait to teach Evelyn to drive her properly. My fingertips trembled as I traced his handwriting. 2 years he'd been gone. And yet now it felt like he was reaching out from the grave, guiding me again. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, the sky pale. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I started the engine of my own car. I didn't know what I was going to discover. I didn't know why Martin had visited this stranger before he died. I didn't know what secret he had hidden inside the Cadillac. But I knew this. That car wasn't gone. And neither was Martin's voice. The drive across town felt longer than usual. Every traffic light, every turn, every passing building seemed heavier somehow, like the world was holding its breath along with me. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel each time I imagined Martin walking into a stranger's workshop. Alone, sick, knowing his time was running out, trying to protect me from something I still didn't fully understand. By the time I reached the industrial district, a thin mist had settled across the streets. Rows of metal buildings stretched along the road, quiet and gray in the early morning light. Then I saw it. Hail Classic Restorations. Written on a modest sign above a wide garage door. Marcus was waiting outside. A tall man, maybe in his 60s, gray hair pulled back, denim shirt dusty from work. His eyes looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying the weight of something he'd been keeping inside too long. He stepped forward as I parked. "Mrs. Harper?" he asked gently. I nodded. He shook my hand, his grip firm but trembling slightly. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry for the circumstances." I didn't know what to say, so I simply asked, "Where's the car?" He motioned toward the workshop. "Inside. Come with me." The moment he opened the big steel door, the smell of oil, metal, and polish drifted out. It reminded me so much of Martin's garage that my throat tightened. Marcus led me past rows of restored cars, each gleaming under bright overhead lights, until we stopped in front of one covered with a large gray cloth. He took a breath, then slowly lifted the cover. There it was. The Eldorado. Beautiful. Massive. Elegant. Her burgundy paint shone under the lights like she'd never spent a single day outside. My breath caught. I stepped forward, placing my hand gently on the hood. The metal was cool, smooth, familiar. "She's perfect," I whispered. Marcus nodded. "Your husband loved this car more than any man I've ever seen love a machine. Every time he talked about you, the car, or the time he spent restoring it, he had this light in his eyes." Tears pricked my vision. "Brandon sold it for $8,000? Marcus said quietly, almost to himself. "I don't blame him for not knowing. But Mrs. Harper, this car is worth $200,000. At least." My knees nearly buckled. I had to brace myself against the door frame of the car. 200. I repeated, unsure if I even heard correctly. "Yes. It's one of the rarest surviving models. Martin restored it to near museum quality. Any collector would pay 6 figures for it." Anger, grief, disbelief, they all collided inside me at once. Brandon hadn't just stolen a car. He had stolen a fortune. A legacy. A piece of Martin. Marcus watched me carefully, giving me time to absorb the shock. Then he said quietly, "Mrs. Harper, the money isn't the reason I called you." I turned to him slowly. "Then why?" He swallowed, his voice dropping lower. "Your husband didn't trust your son-in-law. He told me something wasn't right. He said he needed a safe place, somewhere Brandon would never think to look." A faint tremor ran through me. "When Martin came here the last time," Marcus continued, "he asked me to help him install something." He tapped the side of the dashboard. "A hidden compartment. Behind the radio." My breath hitched. "A hidden. What? Why?" "I didn't know the full reason then," Marcus admitted. "But I could tell he was worried. Really worried. He spent the better part of 2 years, 24 months, collecting things. Documents. Notes. Evidence. He stored it here." He looked directly into my eyes. "Mrs. Harper, your husband left you something inside that compartment. Something he said you would need, especially if something happened to him." My heart thudded painfully. Marcus opened the driver's door, then leaned inside. With practiced fingers, he pressed 2 small points under the dashboard. With a soft click, the radio panel loosened, revealing a dark hollow space behind it. He stepped back. I didn't open it. It wasn't meant for me. I stared at the compartment for a long moment, feeling the weight of Martin's presence all around me. His planning, his fear, his love, his warnings. Everything he'd tried to protect me from. Finally, with a trembling hand, I reached inside. My fingers brushed against something thick. Paper, envelopes, maybe more. The air around me seemed to still. This wasn't just about a car. This wasn't even about money. This was the beginning of a truth that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about my daughter's husband, and everything Martin had died trying to reveal. My hand shook as I pulled the first envelope from the shadowed compartment. It was thick, yellowed at the edges, and sealed with a strip of tape Martin must have pressed down himself. His handwriting, steady, familiar, careful, covered the front. Evelyn, if you're reading this, I couldn't protect you in life. So I will protect you in death. The moment my eyes traced those words, something inside me cracked open. I hadn't heard his voice in 2 years, yet suddenly it was all around me, warm, steady, the same voice that used to say, "Don't worry, Evie. I've got you." My fingers slipped under the tape, lifting the seal gently so it wouldn't tear. Inside were several folded documents, a smaller envelope, and a USB drive wrapped in a piece of cloth. I breathed slowly, unfolding the first sheet. A passport. But not Brandon's. Damien Ross Hale. A face that looked exactly like Brandon stared back at me. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. Another passport. Another name. Then a marriage certificate. Then another. And another. The dates didn't overlap, but they brushed dangerously close. Too close for any honest man. Each wife had a different name, a different state, a different beginning. And the same ending. Financial collapse. Eviction. Stolen assets. Disappearing funds. A missing husband. I lifted the next page, and the world tilted again. There were 2 names written in Martin's handwriting at the top. Harold Briggs. Victor Lane. Below each name were photographs. Elderly men, kind-faced, unsuspecting. Next to each photo was a summary written in my husband's careful, steady script. Harold. Met Damien when he started dating Harold's daughter. Within 7 months, Harold refinanced his house under pressure. Lost $118,000. Daughter abandoned. Damien vanished. Victor. Widower. Damien targeted him through his son's wife. Coerced sale of home. Emptied savings. Disappeared with $92,000. Martin had underlined the same sentence beneath both summaries. His pattern: infiltrates through family, pressures parents, steals assets, destroys. I put a hand over my mouth, trying not to cry out. My daughter. My Jasmine. She didn't just marry a selfish man. She married a predator. A repeat offender. A man who moved from family to family like a wolf wearing borrowed love. My heart raced painfully as I unfolded Martin's handwritten letter, the one addressed only to me. Evelyn. If Jasmine brings this man into her life, he will eventually turn on you. He will lie to her, isolate her, then push her to believe you're a burden. It begins with small requests, suggestions about your health, your safety, your living alone. Then he will suggest selling your home. He will frame it as helping you. But he will take everything you built. Everything we built. A tear slipped down my cheek and fell directly on the paper. I've been tracking him for 24 months. He is dangerous. He is skilled. And he will not stop unless someone stops him. Jasmine is blinded by love. If I am gone, you will be alone in this fight. So I'm leaving you proof, all of it documented. Trust Marcus. He is honest. Use this evidence before it's too late. The last line shattered me. I couldn't save myself. But I can still save you. My hands trembled so badly that Marcus stepped forward, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Harper, are you all right? I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe through the trembling in my chest. My husband. He knew. He knew what Brandon, what Damien, really was. Marcus nodded slowly. He suspected from the start. Something about the man felt wrong to him. He spent months here, going through documents, researching, preparing that compartment. He never said the details, but he always told me, if something happens to me, Marcus, Evelyn will come looking. The truth hit me with full force. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just manipulation. This man had destroyed families, ruined lives. And Jasmine, my baby girl, she was next in line without even knowing she was already standing on the edge. I pressed my hand to my chest, the weight of the documents like fire in my grip. How did he hide all this? I whispered. How did he hide who he is from everyone? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, the ringing of my phone cut sharply through the silence. The screen lit up with a notification. Unknown number, voicemail received. Marcus frowned. Do you want to check it? Every instinct told me yes. I pressed play. A man's voice, deep, urgent, frightened, filled the workshop. Mrs. Harper. My name is Harold Briggs. Your husband told me to call you if something ever happened. If you're hearing this. He was right. Damien is dangerous. Please, call me back. Before he does to you what he did to the rest of us. The message ended abruptly. And the world around me went quiet. I looked at the documents in my hands, then at Marcus, then back at the hidden compartment. I wasn't imagining anything. The threat was real. The danger was real. And for the first time since Martin died, I realized something chilling. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was preparing for a war I didn't know was coming. I sat in my car outside Marcus's workshop for almost 5 full minutes, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. The sun was starting to set, turning the sky into a band of orange and deep violet, but I barely noticed it. All I could hear was Harold Briggs's trembling voice echoing inside my head. Please, call me back. Before he does to you what he did to the rest of us. I finally forced myself to dial the number he left. My thumb hovered for a moment, because once I pressed it, the truth wouldn't stay in shadows anymore. Then I took a deep breath and hit call. It rang only once. Mrs. Harper. The voice was old, worn, careful. This is Harold. I exhaled slowly. Yes. I'm Evelyn. I got your message. There was a painful pause, as if he was steadying himself. I'm so sorry for your loss, he finally said. Your husband was a good man. He helped me more than anyone ever did. He tried to stop Damien before anyone else believed what he truly was. The sound of my husband's name spoken with respect, not pity, nearly broke me. What did Damien do to you, Harold? I whispered, although deep down I already feared the answer. He released a long breath, the sound of a man carrying a wound he'd never fully healed. He married my daughter, Harold said softly. Then he convinced her I was getting forgetful. Unsafe to manage my own finances. He pressured her little by little, until she helped him refinance my house. His voice cracked. I lost everything. My daughter left after the truth came out. She couldn't face what she'd helped him do. My chest tightened painfully. How much? I asked. 118,000. The number felt like a punch. And then. I whispered. He vanished, Harold said. Took the money, took my daughter's trust, took my home. Your husband found me a few months later. He told me he was tracking Damien. He promised he'd stop him. I wish he had more time. I closed my eyes, trying to steady the sting rising behind them. Mrs. Harper, he said gently, if Brandon, is with your daughter, you need to protect her. He'll break her spirit before he takes her money. It's how he works. I thanked him, promised I'd stay in touch, and hung up with a shaky breath. But I wasn't done. The next name in Martin's file, Victor Lane. I called him immediately. This call didn't even ring. He answered instantly. Is this Evelyn? His voice was deeper, rougher, like someone who'd spent years trying to rebuild what had been taken. Yes, I said. My husband. He spoke with you before he passed. A heavy sigh. He saved me from ending myself. That's what he did. My heart dropped. Damien got to me through my daughter-in-law, Victor said. Pretended to be the perfect family man. Spoke gently. Helped around the house. Complimented my wife's cooking. Even brought gifts. He laughed bitterly. Should have known no one's that kind for free. What did he do? I asked. Convinced me to sell our house, he said. Told me it'd be easier to downsize in retirement. Said he'd help us handle the process. Another bitter chuckle. He handled it all right. Boiled us down to bank statements and empty boxes. Did he steal everything? I whispered. Every last penny, Victor said. 92,000. Gone. My wife hasn't smiled in 2 years. His voice shook with something deeper than grief, shame. Your husband was the only person who believed me. He said he was building a case. Said one day, he'd bring Damien down. My eyes filled again, but this time not with sorrow, with a rising, burning anger. And now Damien is after you, Victor said. And your daughter. It's how he works. He chooses families who trust easily, who love hard, who don't question small changes. He wants control first. Then he takes everything. Control. Yes. That was Brandon's specialty. The gentle suggestions. The concerned looks. I'm just trying to help Jasmine manage her mother's affairs. It all made horrifying sense now. Evelyn. Victor's voice softened. Whatever you do, don't let him isolate you. That's how he wins. I won't, I said, feeling steel forming in my chest. Not anymore. When I hung up, the sky had turned fully dark. My reflection in the windshield looked older, harder, changed in a way I couldn't explain. The grief was still there, Martin was still gone, but something else had joined it now. Resolve. I whispered into the dim space of my car, as if my husband could hear me. Martin. I understand now. And I'm going to finish what you started. Then I started the engine, my hands steady on the wheel. Because I no longer had doubts. No more hesitation. No more silence. Brandon didn't just lie. Didn't just manipulate. Didn't just sell the car. He was a professional predator. A practiced thief. A man who destroyed families and walked away without looking back. And he thought I was his next victim. Not this time. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Not anger, not panic, but a steady, anchored sense of direction. It was as if Martin's voice was guiding me now, step by step, toward the truth he tried so hard to protect while he was still alive. I dressed quietly, ate nothing, and drove straight to the bank the moment it opened. The building was bright with morning sunlight, the glass doors reflecting the pale blue sky, but everything inside me felt motionless. Focused. Like the world was moving around me while I stayed still. When I stepped inside, The same clerk who used to greet Martin every visit looked up and froze. "Mrs. Harper, I haven't seen you in a long time." He spoke softly, as if sensing something was wrong. "I need access to Martin's safe deposit box," I told him, my voice calm but firm. "He left authorization for me." The clerk blinked, nodded quickly, and led me to a private room in the back. My hands tightened around my purse the entire walk. I didn't know what I was about to find, only that Martin had hidden it for a reason, because he knew one day I might need it. The metal box slid out of its compartment with a low, echoing scrape. The clerk left me alone, closing the door gently behind him. For a long moment, I just stared at the box. It felt like a final conversation waiting to happen. I opened it slowly. Inside, everything was arranged with Martin's usual precision. Perfectly lined papers, neatly labeled envelopes, and on top of everything, a sealed letter with my name on it. My breath caught. Evelyn. Just my name. In Martin's handwriting. That alone was enough to make my heart twist painfully. My hands trembled as I opened it. "If you're reading this, sweetheart, I'm already gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed the page against my chest for a moment, eyes squeezed shut, trying to steady the ache in my throat. Then I kept reading. "I never wanted you to face anything alone. But I began to fear that Damien, wasn't who he claimed to be. I didn't have proof yet, so I started keeping my findings here. I needed you to have a way out if things ever went wrong." I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes again. "This money is yours. Not for bills. Not for emergencies. For freedom. For protection. For your future, without fear." Only then did I look at the large envelope inside the box. It was heavier than I expected. Inside, carefully packed and sealed, bank statements totaling $400,000. Investments Martin had made over the years. Savings he had quietly built. A financial shield he had prepared for me long before he died. My knees almost weakened. He'd saved me. Even now. Under the statements was another smaller folder, detailed notes of everything Martin discovered about Damien. None of this was in the car's hidden compartment. This was the finalized part of his investigation. Exact dates. Contact attempts. Names of victims. Patterns. Warnings. Everything he couldn't tell me because he didn't want me to be afraid while he was still alive. I pressed both hands against my mouth, letting the truth settle in slowly. He knew. He knew Brandon was dangerous long before I even suspected something was wrong. He tried to protect me. He tried to protect Jasmine. And he hid all of this in a place Damien could never reach. When I finally stepped out of the room, the folder pressed securely against my chest, I felt different from the woman who walked in. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't a frail widow everyone thought could be manipulated. I was armed now, with the truth, with resources, with Martin's final blessing. The bank's sunlight felt warmer as I stepped outside. For the first time in a long while, I lifted my chin and took a deep breath. And I whispered softly, so only Martin could hear it. "I'm ready now." Because the next step was unavoidable. I had to confront someone who had already stolen too much from too many families. Damien wasn't going to see it coming. And this time, he would pay for everything. I didn't drive home right away. I couldn't. My mind was spinning with everything I had uncovered, and I knew that going back to an empty house, with all its memories and silence, would only make my fear grow louder. I needed clarity. I needed a direction. I needed someone who understood predators like Damien. So I drove straight to Marcus. When I pulled into the workshop, he was outside tightening a bolt on a customer's motorcycle. The moment he saw the folder clutched in my hands, he stood up straighter. "You found something," he said quietly, wiping his hands on a rag. "I found everything," I answered. He nodded once, as if he'd expected that all along. Then he motioned me inside. The workshop smelled of engine oil, polished chrome, and something warm, like coffee that had been sitting forgotten on a counter. Tools lined the walls in perfect order, but Marcus didn't head toward them. Instead, he led me to a corner office I hadn't been inside before. And that's where I met him. A tall man in his 50s, wearing a faded leather jacket and an expression that had clearly seen too many human tragedies. His eyes were sharp, trained, calculating. "Evelyn," Marcus said, "this is Detective Aaron Whitlock. Retired now, but he used to investigate complex financial fraud cases." Martin trusted him. The detective offered a hand. "Your husband was one of the smartest men I ever met. When he came to me 2 years ago, he already knew more about Damien than half the active investigators." Hearing that made my chest tighten again. I handed him the folder without speaking. He flipped through the documents with the steady calmness of someone who had done this for decades. After a few minutes, he set the papers down and looked at me with a seriousness that felt heavy in the air. "I need to tell you something plainly," he said. "You and your daughter are in the middle of a long, practiced pattern. Damien Hale isn't just a con artist. He's a groomer. He studies families, learns weaknesses, observes emotional pressure points. He doesn't steal impulsively. He steals strategically." He leaned back slightly, and his next move was already in progress. My pulse quickened, but I forced my voice steady. "What move?" The detective folded his hands. He would begin gently suggesting that you're overwhelmed, forgetful, needing more help around the house. He'd talk to Jasmine privately, never in front of you, about your well-being. He'd appear concerned, supportive, protective. I felt cold. "That's exactly what he did with Harold and Victor," I whispered. Whitlock nodded once. "And next, he would convince Jasmine that moving you into an assisted living facility would be best for everyone's safety and peace of mind. He'd say things like, 'She'll be taken care of. We'll visit every week. It's for her mental health.'" My hands curled into fists. "After that," Whitlock continued, "comes the real goal. He persuades Jasmine to sell your home, telling her it's necessary to cover your care or expenses." A tremor ran through me, not of fear but fury. "And once that sale is complete, Damien disappears. With the money, leaving Jasmine behind to drown in guilt and blame." My heart sank, because I had seen the earliest signs already. Brandon telling Jasmine I shouldn't live alone. Brandon offering to help with my finances. Brandon suggesting I avoid handling the car keys. Brandon complaining about the size of the house. Brandon always speaking softly when Jasmine wasn't looking. Brandon watching me like a predator watches an opening. Detective Whitlock flipped to the list of victims in Martin's notes. "He is predictable," the detective said. "Deliberate. Patient. He always repeats the same pattern. He's already halfway through yours." My breath caught. "So what do I do?" I whispered. Whitlock's expression sharpened. "You set a trap," he said. "One he won't see coming. One that forces him to reveal himself in front of Jasmine, in front of witnesses, in front of the law." I swallowed. "How?" The detective gave me a faint, grim smile. "By pretending you still trust him. By letting him believe he's winning. And then, at the moment he thinks he has everything under control, you pull the ground from beneath his feet." For the first time since all this began, I felt a spark of something fierce inside my chest. Not fear. Strength. Martin's strength. Whitlock slid the folder back toward me. "We'll help you," he said. "But the final move, that has to come from you. You know him. You see him. You're the only one he'll underestimate enough to slip. I nodded slowly. Because he was right. Brandon believed I was weak. A grieving widow. A confused mother. Someone easy to manipulate. He had no idea who I truly was. And no idea who Martin had helped me become. When I left the workshop, the sky was a deep blue, stars just starting to appear. And for the first time in months, I felt steady, grounded, prepared. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't waiting. It was time to go home. And time to begin the plan. A plan that would finally expose Brandon Hale for everything he truly was. In front of the only person he still controlled. My daughter. By the time I reached home, the house felt different. Quieter, heavier, as if even the walls sensed the storm that was coming. I stood in the foyer for a moment, taking a slow breath before pulling out my phone. If Detective Whitlock was right, and I knew he was, Brandon was already tightening his grip around Jasmine, feeding her doubts, planting small seeds that would grow into complete control. Which meant one thing. I had to reach her before he did. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed a short message. Jasmine, sweetheart. Can you come over? I'd really like to talk. For nearly 10 minutes, there was no reply. And each second stretched longer than the last. Then finally, we'll come by in a bit. Not I. We. My stomach knotted, but I refused to show fear. I spent the next half hour preparing. Not my house, not the living room, not the kitchen table. But myself. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothed the front of my sweater, tucked a loose curl behind my ear, and whispered. You are not a victim. You are Martin's wife. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jasmine standing on the porch, hands clasped, eyes soft and hesitant. Behind her, Brandon stood straight, shoulders back, face composed, but I saw the flicker of irritation in his eyes the moment he spotted the envelope in my hand. Good. He was already nervous. Mom, Jasmine murmured, stepping forward to hug me. I held her a moment longer than usual, feeling her warmth, her breath, her heartbeat, the things I was fighting for. Come inside, I said gently. Brandon walked in first, exactly like a man who believed he owned the space he entered. He sat down on the couch without being asked. Jasmine perched beside him, her fingers intertwined with his. I stayed standing. I want to talk to you both, I began, keeping my voice calm, steady. About the car. Brandon's smile was smooth, polished, the kind a liar practiced in the mirror. Evelyn, we already explained. I raised a hand. He stopped. I know what you said, I replied. But I found out something new. His jaw tightened. Jasmine looked confused. Mom, what's going on? I opened the envelope and laid the first paper on the coffee table, a photo of the hidden compartment Martin built inside the car. Brandon's entire body stiffened. Jasmine blinked. What is that? A secret compartment, I said quietly. Your father built it with Marcus Hale. And Brandon sold the car without knowing it existed. Jasmine shifted uncomfortably. Mom, this looks serious. Oh, it's very serious, I said, sliding out the next page, an exact print of Damien Cole's legal identity. Brandon's face went pale. Jasmine's voice cracked. Who is that? I looked straight at her. Your husband. Her breath hitched. What? Brandon Hale doesn't exist, I continued. Not legally. His real name is Damien Cole. He's been married twice before. He stole from both families. He ruined their lives. And he tried to do the same thing to us. Jasmine turned to Brandon, her eyes wide and trembling. Brandon. Please tell me this can't be. He stood abruptly. Evelyn, enough of this. You're confused. You've been stressed. You're. Don't you dare, I said softly but sharply, stopping him mid-sentence. Don't you dare use my age or grief to twist this. He froze. I laid out the testimonies from Harold and Victor, each one echoing the same pattern. Marriage, manipulation, theft, disappearance. Jasmine read them with shaking hands. Brandon took a step back. His breathing changed. His eyes darted toward the door. He knew he was cornered. Sweetheart, I said to Jasmine, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this sooner. But he played you the same way he played everyone else, slowly, gently, with the illusion of love. Tears filled her eyes, not from grief but from betrayal. Brandon suddenly reached for her arm. Jasmine, don't listen to her. She's trying to turn you against me. This is all. She pulled away so fast he stumbled. Don't touch me, she whispered. That was the moment something inside him snapped. His mask slid off. His eyes hardened. He wasn't pretending anymore. Fine, he spat. Believe her. But I'm not losing everything because of some old woman who can't keep her life together. He lunged toward the hallway, toward the exit. But he never made it. Detective Whitlock stepped through the front door with 2 officers, blocking the path. Brandon froze, his face draining of all color. Whitlock's voice was cold. Going somewhere, Damien? Brandon's breath hitched. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting between all of us. Me, Jasmine, the officers, the evidence spread on the table. He realized it was over. And in that moment, a strange calm washed over me. Because for the first time since Martin died, I felt truly safe. And for the first time since Jasmine got married, she finally saw the truth. Brandon took 1 step back, then another, then surrendered without a fight. Because predators like him don't know how to face consequences. And this time, he had nowhere to run. The officers didn't arrest Brandon immediately. Detective Whitlock wanted ironclad evidence, something undeniable in court that tied him to active flight, stolen funds, and identity fraud. So they let him think he had time. Just enough rope to hang himself. And exactly as Whitlock predicted, Brandon tried to run the moment he slipped out of their sight. It happened the next morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside me, when Whitlock burst through the back door with urgency in his eyes. He's moving, he said. He bought a ticket under one of his aliases. My heartbeat kicked into a sprint. Where? Riverfront International Airport. Final destination, Sao Paulo. My stomach clenched. That was almost exactly the route Victor mentioned. The same escape pattern, the same timing, the same strategy. Damien had followed the script perfectly. Except this time, we were waiting for him at the end of it. Jasmine needs to come, Whitlock said. She has to see it with her own eyes. I hesitated for only a second before nodding. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, her voice weak but determined. I'm coming, she said. 20 minutes later, the 3 of us were racing down the highway in Whitlock's SUV. Jasmine sat in the back seat, her hands clenched in her lap, her breath uneven. Every few minutes, she wiped her face as if trying to erase the last traces of the life she thought she had. The airport rose ahead of us, glass, steel, and frantic movement. Travelers rushed in and out of sliding doors, luggage wheels rattling against the pavement. The moment we stepped inside, my heart thudded in my throat. Whitlock checked his phone. Gate C-17. Flight leaves in 28 minutes. We moved quickly, weaving through crowds, passing security officers, families, crying children, businessmen, tourists. But the moment we reached the final stretch near the escalators, I saw him. Brandon, Damien, standing at the check-in counter in a baseball cap and dark jacket, his head low, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He handed a passport to the agent, tapping his foot impatiently. "He's really doing it," Jasmine whispered, her voice cracking. He turned slightly, and froze. His eyes locked with mine. Everything in his face changed in an instant. Surprise. Fear. Pure, animal panic. He whipped around and bolted toward the escalators. "Stop him!" Whitlock shouted. We all chased him, the detective, the officers, me, even Jasmine. The airport turned into echoes of shouting voices and pounding footsteps. People jumped aside as Damien sprinted through the terminal, knocking into strangers, knocking over a sign, pushing past a flight attendant who shrieked in shock. "Damien!" Jasmine cried, her voice sharp with betrayal and heartbreak. "Stop." But he didn't. He jabbed the call button for the emergency stairwell and slipped inside. Whitlock cursed and followed, the door slamming behind them. I grabbed Jasmine's hand, and we ran down the parallel escalators. When we reached the lower level, Damien burst out of the stairwell again, only to find 3 officers waiting for him, guns drawn, voices loud and commanding. He skidded to a stop, panting, sweat dripping down the side of his face. But it wasn't the guns that broke him. It was Jasmine. She stepped forward, not afraid, not hesitant, her eyes red but clear. "How could you?" she whispered. "My father trusted you. My mother loved you. And you used us. You used me." Damien swallowed hard. "Jasmine, please listen. I did what I had to." "No," she said with a strange calm. "You did what you wanted." The officers stepped in. "Hands where we can see them." He didn't resist this time. He dropped the duffel bag. It hit the ground with a heavy thud, an unmistakable thud that made Whitlock kneel and unzip it immediately. Inside, $55,000 in cash. Multiple fake passports. A hard drive partition full of stolen identities. A forged marriage license. Credit card skimmers. And at the very bottom, documents with Jasmine's name on them. He was already preparing the next stage of the scam. Jasmine covered her mouth with both hands as tears rolled down her cheeks. Damien's face twisted with rage. "You ruined everything," he screamed at me as the officers cuffed him. "This was all supposed to be mine. You old." Whitlock cut him off. "That's enough." The officers dragged him away, his voice fading behind us, swallowed by terminal noise and airport announcements. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Jasmine broke. She fell into my arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I held her tightly, stroking the back of her head, whispering, "It's over. It's over. You're safe now. We're both safe now." And for the first time since Martin died, the weight on my chest finally lifted. The case moved fast after that. With clear evidence, testimonies from Harold and Victor, the fake identities, the attempted flight, and Martin's investigative notes. The judge didn't hesitate. Damien Brandon Hale was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Jasmine attended every hearing, holding my hand each time, rebuilding herself piece by piece. She cried when the sentence was read, not out of grief, but relief. The man she loved was gone. But so was the danger he carried. 2 months later, Marcus drove up my driveway in the Cadillac. Polished, restored, shining like a silver memory brought back to life. When I stepped outside, Jasmine was right beside me. "It's yours," Marcus said with a soft smile. "It always was." I ran my hand along the smooth curve of the hood, feeling the warmth of sunlight on the chrome. Jasmine wiped her eyes beside me. "Mom, do you want to take it for a drive?" For a moment, I couldn't answer. Then I nodded. We climbed inside, her in the passenger seat, me behind the wheel. I turned the key. The engine hummed to life, deep and steady, Like a heartbeat I thought I'd never hear again. As we pulled out of the driveway, wind rushing in, sunlight pouring over us, I felt Martin everywhere. In the sound of the road. In the strength in my hands. In the daughter beside me. In the life he had protected until the very end. And as we drove down the open street, my heart whispered just one thing. I kept my promise, Martin. I finished what you started.